Hey, welcome back to the Legally Illegal podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and today we'll be discussing racial profiling and the law. Before we get into it, I'll provide a brief explanation about what racial profiling is and why it's a problem. Racial profiling is essentially suspecting someone of having committed a criminal offense based solely off their race or ethnicity. This is a problem because it impairs the rights of many targeted groups, especially minorities. So our question today is, does the law effectively prevent racial profiling in the collection of evidence in support of a criminal investigation? We'll be taking listener questions, responses, and opinions to help answer this question today via Twitter. So our first tweet comes from @JLouis, and he says, well, that's obvious. There are human rights codes that help protect everyone from racial discrimination. Well, JLouis, this isn't always the case. While human rights codes offer protection from discrimination in multiple social areas as well as outlining the prohibited grounds of discrimination, it is not always effective in preventing racial profiling, believe it or not. When looking at segregated communities, it should be understood that rights and freedoms under the Charter are not always equally protected for all races. In fact, many predominantly black communities across North America, especially those of lower class, are often faced with systemic discrimination due to de facto segregation of minorities within these communities. For example, a community that is predominantly African American with a lead problem in their water may not receive proper equal accommodation, and because these individuals face discrimination by fact as opposed to by law, it becomes difficult to seek legal remedy under anti-discrimination laws and human rights codes. This is similar in certain criminal cases. Our next question comes from @BrandTheMan. What kind of name is that? Well, anyways, he asks, can society influence the laws regarding racial profiling? Well, BrandTheMan, of course, just as any other laws, society's values plays a big role in creating laws, enforcing laws, and the consequences of breaking laws. Research conducted by William D. Jackson leads to the conclusion that social norms within society have a major influence on the law and the enforcement of said laws. Racism in Western society, and the United States in particular, has been a growing problem as of recent, and racist behaviors prove problematic when focusing on the law. Although human rights codes are in place to avoid racial discrimination, society's behaviors and obedience to the law ultimately supersedes this. This may influence officers in stops such as Constable Olson of the Metro Toronto Police in the case of R v. Brown. So, DJ Khaled asks, what is R v. Brown? Well, DJ Khaled, I'm glad you asked, but before I answer that question, we'll have to go on a break.
What happens when you take a whole chicken, pack it full of mashed potatoes, top it full of gravy, insert some corn, then deep fry it? You've got yourself a meal. The all-new stuffed Pollo Todo Frito, now at Cluck and Bell. The meal in one just got massive. Cluck and Bell.
Hey, welcome back to the Legally Illegal podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and on topic of racial profiling and the law today, we left off with a question from an active listener about a very important landmark case. During the night of November 1st, 1999, former NBA player Decavin Brown was abruptly stopped on the Don Valley Parkway by Constable Olson of the Metro Toronto Police upon discriminatory circumstances based solely on Brown's skin color. Brown failed the roadside screening test and was charged under Section 253B of the Criminal Code of Canada with a blood alcohol level over the legal limit, to which the defense argued that the breathalyzer test conducted should be excluded as evidence as it violated Section 24 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, declaring that Section 9 of the Charter was also violated due to the officer investigating being racial profiling. Brown was subsequently convicted. Now, this case is important when discussing the collection of evidence in support of a criminal investigation, as it demonstrates the abuse of authority by police in regard to racial profiling, as Mr. Brown was targeted for being a black minority in an expensive car, which Constable Olson used as grounds for suspecting Brown of committing an offense. Racial profiling, while typically subtle, is expressed here explicitly through Olson's specific targeting of Brown. This is problematic, as suggested before. Individual biases and social influences on officers conducting criminal investigations can greatly affect the outcome of these investigations and impair the rights of the individuals wrongfully stopped under their Section 9 rights to not be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. So while it may seem that laws regarding racial profiling do effectively prevent it from happening, upon further research and deeper analysis of these laws, it can be concluded that they in fact do not prevent racial profiling from happening, as this problem will continue to happen. And it looks like that's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for leaving on such an unfortunate note, but it had to be said. Until next time, this is Brandon of a Legally Illegal Podcast. Have a nice day.